Hey guys, a while back we reviewed Fractal North and it was a good case with an IKEA vibe to it. But it seems like a lot of people were asking for a larger case. So Fractal listened and they've delivered. They've actually released a Fractal North XL. It's a little bigger in basically every single way. You have an extra fan, you've got more support for bigger graphics cards, more support for fans, coolers, and the like. So what we're going to do today is go through the differences between these two cases, check what you get for your money, and do an overall review with performance metrics. So let's get right into it. I want to go through and just kind of take it apart. And we're going to kind of cover the main specs of the case. Let's start working from the back side first, where all the cable management will eventually end up. The first thing that I've immediately noticed is the fact that there's a lot more cutouts for the cable management. In comparison to the standard North, there's actually 2 extra cutouts at the top here and 2 additional cutouts on the side. In general, the amount of drives you can fit in is actually the same. The point of upgrading this case is to provide more cooling, such as bigger radiators or more fans, and to accommodate larger graphics cards. So that's kind of the main idea behind it. And I'm just thinking, this is not that much bigger than my current case. In fact, I think it's exactly the same size. So I currently use Fractal Torrent, the full-sized version of it, which is the king of airflow cases, at least for now. Let's see how this one delivers. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to convert my PC from that into this and see how that delivers. We'll probably do that as a separate video, so make sure to subscribe so don't miss it. One of the things I really like about the initial North is just how easy it's to work with it. All the panels easily just come off. You slide off most of them. You only have a few thumb screws to deal with. One notable thing about this particular SKU is we're using a mesh side panel, which also comes with, in this case, pre-installed side fan mount over here, which can be moved around ever so slightly. You can install 2 fans here or even a radiator if you really want to, but that will reduce your cooler height or your graphics card width if you go something a bit crazy. That's something to note. In the standard North, you get this bracket in the package separately, so you need to install it yourself if you want to use it or not. The side panel is huge though, and the mesh isn't too fine, so while this should stop hairs coming through, I don't think it's going to prevent dust from getting in. So you're still going to have to make sure to do cleaning of your PC. So this side bracket comes out with 2 captive screws. So the thumb screws has 2 positions which connect using these captive screws. So you can install it over here, or you can lift it above next to where the CPU goes. Since we're using a mesh side panel, it doesn't really matter how it looks like on the inside. It's more of a practical application, which is a cool little touch. When compared to the standard North case, this case comes in with 340mm fans. We're using the Aspect 14 PWM fans. North comes with 2 of them. For fan and radiator support, we can have up to 420 or 360mm at the front, and we can have up to 280 or 360mm at the top, which also means that at the top we can install 320mm fans, 240 or 280mm fans. Total in this case, we can actually install up to 920mm fans or 840, which is pretty impressive. Let's open up a standard Fractal North and just put them side by side, so we should kind of go through and see exact differences between them. So right here we have North and a North XL. They kind of look the same, literally just kind of scaled up. They also both have basically the same features. I really like the little captive screw in the middle for both of them. What that allows you to do is very easily build a motherboard and just install it in, and it will kind of hold in place while you screw all your screws in, which just makes it nice. The other thing is obviously because it's longer, there's better power supply port on the new case, but we can talk about that a little bit later on. As I mentioned earlier, there are extra slots for cables. So this area right here, so that's for the CPU cables, for the CPU power, it's kind of very limited. So if you were installing extra like a cooler up top and whatever else, you would have a bit more of a limitation. Especially if you install an AIO, it's basically encroaching onto your motherboard. Where with the North, you can safely install an AIO at the top and then route your cables through these cutouts, or just connect directly, and you still have loads of space for the motherboard. And in terms of motherboard support, this actually supports up to an E80X motherboard. So you can go all the way out, and you can actually install additional standoffs for the E80X motherboard specifically. So you can go here, and then you route your cables inside. Obviously, at that point, you'll be covering up the cutouts over here. But you know, if you're getting a big motherboard in there, at least you have the option for it. Since it's obviously longer, you do get an additional cutout at the front, at the bottom as well. What I like about it is, in both of these cases, these are actually safe to kind of put your finger in, because they've actually folded them in and they're just nicely rounded off. One of the things that you can actually install here is an AAO at the front. So both these cases, you can have the front panel here, just kind of taken off for easy access to install your cooler. Or if you want to change your fans or whatever else. So kind of just unscrew it, and you have your access here. Same goes for the front. The front section comes off, so you kind of just pull it at the bottom here, and you take out the wooden panel, which also houses the filter here. You can just kind of click it off, clean it, wash it, and then just attach it back. So it just clicks in place. This is no different from the original Fractal North, but what you'll see is the wood tint is actually slightly different. And that's because they actually use real wood. What you'll find is wood is not always exactly the same color, unless you spend loads of money making sure they all match. But to be honest, it's not like somebody's gonna have two of these cases side by side. And if they do, then actually I think it might even look cooler if they're slightly different. You know which case is yours, which one is your partner's, for example. But yeah, they're slightly different tints, but they both look really premium. I really like that. The method in terms of how they mount it and how they do the filters is kind of the same. While we're on the subject of filters, there's also a filter down the back that you can reach in and remove for the power supply. So this is for the North, and the XL is very similar. In fact, it's the same. I'm pretty sure I can just put the XL version underneath here. There you go. So they're identical, which is nice. So let's talk about price. The new Fractal North XL is actually going to retail for about $170 US. So it seems that in this launch, Fractal is not going to differentiate between tempered glass or mesh panels. That's kind of the price we have right now. It's still pre-launch, so they might change their mind. But we'll leave the links in the description below so you can check it out further if you are interested in buying any of it. If you plan to use these cases with air cooler, there are certain things to consider. On the smaller Fractal North, you can install it up to 145mm cooler in height if you're using the side fan bracket, or 170mm without the bracket. On the other hand, since this is a larger case, it can fit an 155mm cooler with the side bracket, or up to 185mm if you're not using the side bracket. Which, to be honest, 155mm is actually all you would need in most cases, as most coolers kind of try to be within that size. I think for the build that I'm going to do later, I'm going to be using an AAO and just going to populate the top with the 360mm radiator. But if you're using an air cooler, that's something to consider. The next main difference is what's happening at the back. What's funny, on the new case, at the back, there is actually 1mm, exactly 1mm less space between the side panel and the back wall. I would have thought it would be more, but in this case, according to the Fractal's spec, it's actually 1mm less. But to be honest, there's more space overall, so I don't think it makes that much of a difference. Like you see on both of them, you do get a little fan controller at the top here. Fractal North XL has actually gone an extra step, and they've actually pre-wired these fans, which is a nice little touch. So you have one spare port if you want to connect an extra fan. So for example, a fan for the back, or if you do decide to use the fans at the front. But the old case, you just get a controller. You've got to do the work. So I don't know, I prefer the lazy approach where things are already done for me, so it's kind of nice. As I mentioned earlier, you do have additional cutouts, and because it's bigger, you actually have more space to work around. The other thing is these brackets at the bottom. So you can actually shift them around, you can actually move them further towards the front. And the reason you might want to do that is because if you're installing a big radiator at the front, You can install, just a single depth radiator or even a double, providing that you have enough space for your power supply. What might happen is, if you're building a super high-end system, you might need a really big power supply, and then you don't want to, encroach on this. Generally speaking, if you're building a high-end system now in something like this, you're probably going to have an NAS where you're going to store most of your data, or you're going to have SSDs. So I'd say, if you really have to, if you want to put a big radiator, just remove one of the drive cages completely, put a big power supply in, and have a big radiator at the front, and you're good to go. But you do have more space for that, which is nice. And more space you will need. So this case overall is about 36% larger than the standard case. Just looking at it like this, it does not seem that much bigger. But don't forget, it's bigger in every single direction. So the amount of volume it takes up is more. And you can actually tell that by its weight. So the new case is about 2 kilos heavier. Once you've built it up with this nice mesh panel on the side, it actually looks kind of nice. It looks sophisticated. And that's what we're going to check out. So I think the next step is I'm going to build in this. We're going to put in our standard test bench, and we're going to check out the results, how it delivers, how it performs, what the build process is like, and we'll get straight to it. Now that the build is done, the main thing I've noticed is how much size matters. Getting bigger really makes a difference because it gives you more options for parts and it's way more forgiving. If you're not super experienced when building PCs, this is a big plus. It means that if you don't get all the compatibility stuff perfect, you're probably still going to be okay. For the more seasoned builders, working within this case might feel a bit mundane. It's a straightforward rectangular shape, typical cable management paths, and usual spots for fans and radiators that don't offer much in the way of excitement. It is boring in a good way, but boring nevertheless. With that being said, I do appreciate the extra cable cutouts and placement and secure installation of the grommets, which keeps them in place without slipping, even when you're pulling cables through. The case gets a bit trickier at the bottom, especially with the full-size ITX motherboard that requires more effort to connect the front header connections as well as audio connectors. This wouldn't be an issue with an MITX board though. With our test bench using air cooler, we were not able to install the side fan bracket in its topmost position. However, we managed to place it near the GPU, directing fresh air towards it. So if you're using a large card or cooler, it's wise to verify compatibility first. Fractal has thoughtfully included a cutout at the top of the case, designed for a fill port of a custom water loop, which is a pretty cool feature. The case is spacious enough to accommodate an impressive custom water loop setup. Also, as previously noted, the fan headers come pre-wired, and there are also fan pass-throughs, allowing for additional few fans. However, it is important to be cautious not to overload the headers. Regarding cable management, there is ample room at the top for power cable, especially when there is no fan or radiator installed there. It might be a bit trickier for those spaces when they are occupied. We will test that out in the upcoming build video, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. The bottom chamber next to the power supply is surprisingly spacious for tucking those extra cables away, which is handy. However, I'd suggest sorting out the power supply cables first, since the cutouts for the lower cables, like the audio and front I/O, are on the side and might get blocked if you don't. With the case being on the larger side and capable of housing more gear, it would have been nice to see bigger Velcro straps at the back for better cable management. The ideal setup would feature hook and loop style fasteners that would really let you snug the cables up against the chassis for a tidy look. When you put this case side by side with others, like the standard North, the size difference really stands out. The XL case offers significantly more space, making it a more flexible option to build in. Given that this series is relatively new to Fractal, it seems they may have not followed the same sizing conventions as their other lineups. To those familiar with Fractal offerings, the XL might seem like the usual large case. As compared to others, North XL is more like a standard Meshify case in size, and North Standard is more like a Meshify compact, so don't get deterred by the XL moniker. Now onto our benchmarking. Here we put this case through our thermal stress test, and in our full fan speed test, we found out that it performed just 2 degrees cooler on the CPU than the non-XL variant, being just about 1 dBA louder at 47.7. Because it is using 140mm fans, the noise is loud but not horrible. In noise normalized test at 40 dBA, The case maintained a 1 degree cooler temperature on the CPU and was 1 degree warmer on the GPU, which is quite similar in performance. The fact they achieved this with an extra fan in the mix is commendable. This brings us to our final thoughts. While building in this case might not be the most exciting to me personally, it stands out as a very contemporary case packed with great features. It supports a wide range of coolers and large GPUs and has an appealing exterior. The price is on the higher side, but it is justified by the inclusion of 3 fans, fan controller, and an attractive wooden accent on the front. I'm eager to start my own build in this case, so feel free to drop any questions below. We'll work to address those in the upcoming video. If you want to check out any of the items covered in the video, the links are in the description below. I hope you found this useful. Don't forget to give us a like and subscribe for more. We'll see you guys in the next one.